Okay, so before we continue, is there anything that you want to ask related to the assignment? Sorry, assignment. Related to the videos? The first video is about the continuation of specific cell, specialized cell found in the ground tissue, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, and then the complex tissue, xylem and also phloem. So xylem and phloem is known as complex tissue because it is made of different kind of tissue lah. Alright, as for xylem, it is made of vessel element and also trachea. Phloem composed of companion cell and sieve tube. Okay, right. So that is the first video. Have you watched all the videos?
Yes, madam.
Yes,
Okay,
madam.
all right. So the next video is about chapter 2. The first video is on respiratory pigments. Okay, so you have to what I call it? You have to compare and understand the different structure of hemoglobin and myoglobin, right? Okay. Okay, the structure and the characteristic of hemoglobin and myoglobin. Okay, despite this particular subtopic, are you okay?
Not really, madam.
Not really. Okay. Right, so things that is very important for this part is just the comparison in terms of the structure of hemoglobin and myoglobin. Sahaja. Okay. So meaning to say the table of comparison between the hemoglobin and myoglobin is all that you need. Okay, right. So now let's discuss together. What do you get or what do you understand about the comparison between hemoglobin and myoglobin? Number one, who can share? So maybe this discussion can help siapa-siapa yang mungkin kurang faham. By having this summary, it can help you to understand, insyaAllah. Okay, first, who can share?
Yes, madam.
Okay, Sharif.
Hemoglobin binds to 4 oxygen molecule, while myoglobin binds to only 1 oxygen molecule.
Okay, very good. First, in terms of how many molecules can be carried and bind with hemoglobin or myoglobin. So hemoglobin can carry or bind to up to maximum of 4 molecules of oxygen. All right, whereby myoglobin can only bind to 1 molecule of oxygen. Okay, that is the first one. Okay, good. What makes hemoglobin can bind to 4 molecules of oxygen?
Yeah.
Okay, Aina Afifa.
Hemoglobin has 4 heme group, while myoglobin only have 1.
Okay, all right, good. Kenapa dia ada 4 heme group?
Sebab ada 4 polypeptide chain, madam.
Yes, because it have 4 polypeptide subunit. Okay, hemoglobin has 4 polypeptide subunit. This is 2, this is another 2. So these 2 is 2 alpha subunit and the other 2 is 2 beta subunit. Right? So it is composed of 4 polypeptide or made up of 4 polypeptide subunit ataupun chains. Okay, so each of the subunit has heme group with iron at the center. Right, so that's why dia ada 4 heme group lah. So kenapa dia ada 4 heme group? Because it is made of 4 polypeptide subunit. So right, so that's why it can carry up to maximum of 4 molecules of oxygen. Meanwhile, myoglobin only composed of one polypeptide subunit. Right? So it is made of one polypeptide subunit. Okay, that's why it can carry only one molecule of oxygen. Okay. Okay, right. So 2. Next, number 3. What else that you can compare between hemoglobin and myoglobin? Where does hemoglobin stores the oxygen?
Lungs.
Lung? Kurang tepat.
Muscle.
Hemoglobin.
Oh,
Red blood cell.
Red blood cell. So hemoglobin stores oxygen in the red blood cell, while myoglobin
in muscle, madam.
Stores oxygen in muscle fiber. In muscle fiber or in muscle tissue. Okay, right? So what form of oxygen stored in hemoglobin? Okay, remember, oxygen bind to hemoglobin. It will form
Oxyhemoglobin.
okay, oxyhemoglobin. Okay, so what about myoglobin? Oxygen bind to myoglobin dalam bentuk apa? Oxymyoglobin. Oxymyoglobin. Okay, right? So maksudnya hemoglobin stores oxygen in the red blood cell in the form of oxyhemoglobin. Myoglobin stores oxygen in the muscle fiber in the form of oxymyoglobin. Okay, right? So this is all that you need to know the characteristic and differences between hemoglobin and myoglobin. Right? So salin nanti. Salin benda ni dekat dalam buku awak. Okay, right. Kalau tak salin, screenshot nanti salin. Okay. Okay, next. Okay, next LO related to the next video. The second video of chapter 2 is about oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin. Oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin. Okay, this part. Ada apa yang tak faham? Ada apa tak faham pasal oxygen dissociation curve? Okay, Madam terangkan sikit related to related to the hemoglobin just now. Okay, so I want to touch on this part. Alright, so you can see over here, when oxygen bound to the hemoglobin subunit, right, it will form oxyhemoglobin. So oxygen is loaded in the lung. Maksudnya kat mana oksigen diambil dan disimpan dalam dalam hemoglobin, right? Dia diambil, oksigen is loaded in the lung. Okay, oksigen akan load tu maksudnya macam ambil. Right? Okay. And when oxygen will be unloaded, dilepaskan. Unloaded means dibebaskan. When oxygen is released, so oxygen is released in tissue. So this process is reversible. Right? Maksudnya ada pada keadaan when tissue needs oxygen, hemoglobin will release or will unload the oxygen. Right? In the lung, hemoglobin will load the oxygen. Right? How this is happen? This is happen due to the process ataupun cooperativity characteristic between hemoglobin subunit. Okay, maksudnya apa? Tak faham, madam? Tak faham. Okay, remember hemoglobin has 4 subunit. Okay, madam lukis dalam bentuk macam ni. Okay, 4 subunit. So when one molecule of oxygen, let's say one molecule of oxygen manage to be bind with one subunit, ada 4 subunit kan? So apabila one oxygen manage to bind with one molecule, one subunit, right, of the hemoglobin, it will change its shape slightly. The change, alamak, sekejap ya, my battery, tak apalah. Okay, alright. You can still hear my voice?
Yes, madam.
Okay, alright. Okay, apa tadi nak cakap? Okay, when oxygen bind to one subunit, the other change the shape slightly. The other means here refer to the other 3 polypeptide subunit. Maknanya apa? Kalau sebelum ni dia macam ketat sangat, dia macam tertutup sangat. So ada 4 kan? 2. So when one subunit, right, bind to oxygen, it will cause the other subunit to change the shape slightly. So yang 3 ni akan berubah sikit bentuk dia. Berubah in terms of what? They become more affinity for oxygen. Dia lebih senang untuk ambil oxygen. Itu maksud dia. So this is what we call as the concept of cooperativity. Right? So that more oxygen can be loaded by the hemoglobin. Okay? When 4 oxygen molecule are bound to the bound and one subunit unload its oxygen. The same goes when apabila satu subunit, hemoglobin subunit unload the oxygen, dia bagi oxygen dia lepaskan oxygen dia, the other 3 subunit become more readily to unload oxygen. So lagi 3 subunit tu pun akan lebih senang membebaskan ataupun melepaskan oxygen. Right? As an associated change in the shape where it lowers affinity for oxygen. So dia lagi senang untuk membebaskan oksigen. So bentuk dia akan berubah in terms of lagi senang melepaskan oksigen. Alright, so this is all what meant by cooperativity. Concept of the hemoglobin subunit. Alright, okay. So because this one is related to the oxygen dissociation curve. Okay, right. Okay. Okay, so tak apa. Madam summarisekan sikit. Alright, I'm not going to explain the detail. I'm going to just give you a summary. What do you need to understand about this oxygen dissociation curve? Right. So this is what you have. This is the shape of oxygen dissociation curve. Where y-axis showing you oxygen, percentage oxygen saturation, peratusan saturation. Peratusan ketepuan oksigen dalam hemoglobin versus different in terms of partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, bertentangan dengan what we call it, partial pressure, tekanan separa oksigen. Okay, right, next. Okay, so apa benda yang kena faham madam kat sini? Nampak graf ni ada banyak sangat label bla 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 kan? Okay, yang pertama, madam nak you focus on the percentage of oxygen saturation at different partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, we have here the one that we use to focus 3 different range of oxygen partial pressure. Tekanan separa oksigen pada aras laut. Okay, right. The first one is 100. Right, or 100 or 104. Okay, so this is partial pressure of oxygen in the lung, specifically in alveoli. Okay, dalam paru-paru, what you can see here is the oxygen saturation. Ketepuan oksigen ialah pada tahap almost 100%. Dia takkan sampai 100% lah. So dalam 99, 99 point something, 98, right? So this is what you have in the lung. In the lung, gases exchange takes place. Remember tadi? Hemoglobin will load, ambil oxygen in the lung. And that makes peratusan ketepuan oksigen dalam hemoglobin di dalam paru-paru will be very high. Almost 100% or almost fully saturated, we say. Okay, right. Second one, right, is partial pressure of oxygen at 40 mmHg. Unit partial pressure, mmHg. Okay, at 40 mmHg, this is partial pressure of your tissue at rest. What does it mean by at rest? At rest mean when your tissue is doing normal metabolism. Normal metabolism. Benda-benda biasa yang kita buat secara harian. Okay, right. So dia kita panggil partial pressure of oxygen in tissue at rest. Berapa partial pressure dia? 40 mmHg. And what is the oxygen saturation? Berapa ketepuan oksigen pada waktu ini? Ketepuan oksigen in the hemoglobin at this particular time may be around 70%. Dalam 70% tepu sahaja. Alright, kenapa? Certain amount has been unloaded. Berapa banyak, madam? Berapa persen hemoglobin kita dah unload oksigen? Here, 98% minus 70%. Okay? Around 28% of oxygen has been unloaded, right, by the hemoglobin. Dalam 28% dah unload. Kenapa? Because our tissue is doing normal metabolism. Okay. What about when partial pressure drop down to 20? 20 here is referred to your partial pressure of oxygen, right, in tissue at exercise. Maknanya when you are doing exercise, your partial pressure of oxygen in your tissue is around 20. Tekanan separuh oksigen pada waktu itu lebih kurang 20 mmHg. So what is the oxygen saturation? Berapa ketepuan oksigen? Ketepuan oksigen kita lebih kurang dalam 30%. Maknanya hemoglobin kita tinggal 30% tepu. Lebih kurang macam itulah nak kata kan. How much percentage oxygen has been unloaded? Berapa banyak oksigen dah kena unload? Macam mana nak kira? Siapa tahu?
98/30.
Very good. Okay. 98 minus 30%. Alright. So around 68%. 68% maksudnya lagi banyak oxygen has been unloaded. Tissue is doing heavy activities. Okay, right? Okay, so you can see from here 98% minus 30. Madam, why I need to minus 98? Kenapa saya tak boleh minus 70? Remember, you have to remember where is source of your oxygen. Source of the oxygen came from the lung. Because the lung is loading the oxygen. So kita ambil punca oksigen kita daripada lung minus with 30%. So you have 68% more oxygen has been unloaded compared when your tissue is doing normal metabolism. Nampak tak? Right? So itu the first thing that you have to understand about oxygen dissociation curve. Perkara yang pertama. Okay. Perkara yang kedua that you have to understand about oxygen dissociation curve is, right, what happened to your hemoglobin? What happened to your hemoglobin in terms of kecenderungan dia? Affinity of hemoglobin towards oxygen. Macam mana keadaan kecenderungan? Maksudnya hemoglobin kita ni masa tu macam mana pada different partial pressure. Okay, so we start with here. We start with let's say 0 partial pressure. Okay, so you can see at low partial pressure, right? Ataupun ni lah kawasan sini daripada 0 sampailah 10 ni agaknya partial pressure ni. Nampak tak ni kawasan ni? Alright. So at this partial pressure, right, oxygen has struggled to bind with hemoglobin. Remember, hemoglobin molecule are very tight. Dia belum terbuka lagi macam tu. Alright. So dia masih macam seolah-olah sangat ketat lah. In other words, they have very low affinity towards oxygen. Kecenderungan dia terhadap oksigen sangat-sangat rendah. That's why you can see, tengok madam cuba compare. When your partial pressure of oxygen is 10, contoh, oxygen saturation is less than 10. Less than 10. If we increase 1/4, okay, 10 partial pressure, now kita tengok kalau 20. Kalau 20, kita tengok partial pressure, oxygen saturation 30. Ni 20 jauh sangat. Salah-salah. Kita tengok 15. Okay, kita tengok sini. Contohlah 15. Salah-salah. This is 10, right? 10, 20, this is 10. Okay. When partial pressure is 10, partial pressure of oxygen 10, tengok oxygen saturation kita berapa belas je? Maybe 16% sahaja. Alright? Okay. So, next. When partial pressure is 10, kita naik lagi 10 pula dah. Naik another 10, 20. So, you can see that the oxygen saturation is increase. Tapi increase pun, nampak tak? 16 dengan 30. Lebih kurang macam 1/4 je lah. Macam tu. Right? But what happen when you increase? Daripada 20, pergi 40. Why is it different? Nampak tak kat sini? Kawasan B ni. A little bit slope over here. You can see the binding of oxygen molecule to one subunit will induce the remaining subunit to change its shapes. So, masa partial pressure of oxygen rendah, 10, 20, right? Hemoglobin is very hard to load oxygen, right? So, because hemoglobin has low affinity toward oxygen. Hemoglobin kurang kecenderungan kepada oxygen. But when the partial pressure increase slightly, ataupun when one molecule of oxygen manage to bind with one subunit, macam yang terangkan tadi, it will cause the remaining subunit to change its shape and become high affinity toward oxygen. That's why you can see 20-30%. Apabila partial pressure 40, dia jadi 70%. Naik tinggi. Very steep change. Right? So this is due to the concept of what I said just now, cooperativity. Cooperativity among hemoglobin subunit. Thus, you can see the effect. Hemoglobin has higher affinity toward oxygen. Okay, right. And then what happened when at this area? Okay, kita tengok beza partial pressure 80 dengan partial pressure 100. You can see this is a very high. At this point of partial pressure, you can see that oxygen saturation is very high, right? So this is the partial pressure in the lung where hemoglobin will be saturated with oxygen and form oxyhemoglobin, right? So this is two things that you have to understand about oxygen dissociation curve. Satu, faham untuk terangkan apa yang berlaku pada keadaan, apa yang berlaku pada hemoglobin pada keadaan A, B atau C. Yang kedua ialah to understand about oxygen saturation at different partial pressure. Okay, right. And then next, oxygen dissociation curve can actually shifted. Dia boleh bergerak, boleh teralih. Okay, dia boleh teralih daripada kiri ke kanan. What does it mean by kiri ke kanan? So ini yang kita akan discuss kejap lagi. Right? Okay. So as conclusion, you can see at low partial pressure of oxygen, hemoglobin has low affinity for oxygen. Right? So oxyhemoglobin dissociate into hemoglobin and oxygen. So low partial pressure is actually refer to respiring tissue. Low affinity maksudnya apa tadi? Hemoglobin has low affinity to oxygen maksudnya apa? Hemoglobin is more efficient in terms of loading or in terms of unloading the oxygen?
Unloading.
Yes, very good. In terms of unloading the oxygen at low partial pressure. Ingat, low partial pressure tu 10, 20, 30. Right. So at low partial pressure, oxygen is having more affinity to unload the oxygen. Hemoglobin has higher affinity to unload the oxygen. But at high partial pressure, we refer to partial pressure 100, 90, partial pressure 104, for example. This is high partial pressure. So at this high partial pressure, hemoglobin has high affinity to oxygen. High affinity over here is refers to the affinity for loading oxygen. All right, to form oxyhemoglobin. And this is usually happen in the alveoli. Okay, all right. This is all that you have to understand related to oxygen dissociation curve. Okay. Okay, any question?
No, madam.
Tak ada. Okay. So kalau tak ada, next we go to calculation part, right, related to oxygen dissociation curve. Okay. For your information, so this picture showing you oxygen dissociation curve at pH 7.4. What does it mean? pH 7.4 is our normal blood pH. Because later we are going to see the different, what happened to the oxygen dissociation curve at different pH of blood. You akan nampak perbezaan apa yang berlaku. Okay, right. So this is normal blood pH and this is our normal oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin. Okay, right. So let's start with the first question. Determine oxygen saturation. Berapakah ketepuan oxygen of hemoglobin at partial pressure 100 mmHg, which is in the lung? And what is the oxygen saturation of hemoglobin of tissue at rest, which is at partial pressure of 40 mmHg? Okay, so refer to this picture. Right, the first one tadi, what is the oxygen saturation of hemoglobin in the lung? Berapa? Oxygen saturation.
98.
Okay, so you can see from here. Okay, right, you can get that it is almost around 98%. Right, and for tissue at rest,
70%.
refer to this picture. Okay, it is around 70%. So that is the answer. Okay. Okay, 98% and 70%. Okay, next one. Calculate amount of oxygen unloaded to tissue during normal metabolism or at rest. Amount of oxygen unload during normal metabolism or at rest. Masa ni partial pressure tissue berapa? Berapa partial pressure?
28.
70 partial pressure ni at rest. Madam nak tanya dulu. Apa maksud during normal metabolism tu? Normal metabolism mean partial pressure of oxygen is
40.
40 mmHg. Right? So baru kita boleh tengok what is the amount of oxygen unload. Baru kita boleh faham what is the amount of oxygen unloaded. Okay, berapa jawapan you all?
28.
28. How did you manage to calculate?
98 minus 70.
Okay, very good. Okay, so you can see 98 oxygen from the lung minus with oxygen saturation of hemoglobin at when tissue is at rest or normal metabolism. Okay, so percentage saturation is 70%, so 98 minus 70%. So you get 28%. And what about the other question just now? Amount of oxygen unloaded to tissue during exercise. Amount of oxygen unloaded when tissue during exercise. Okay, what is partial pressure of tissue during exercise?
20.
In this case, kita tengoklah gambar yang dia bagi ni. 22 pun exercise. But in this case, dia bagi kat sini tissue during exercise tu less than 20. So we refer and look at what is the oxygen saturation. So berapa ni oxygen saturation dia? Lebih kurang 18 kot. 18%. So what is the percentage or amount of oxygen unloaded? Unloaded.
80.
28, right? Okay, so 98% minus 18%. So 80%. So ini jumlah amount or percentage of oxygen that has been unloaded, yang telah dilepaskan oleh hemoglobin for tissue during exercise. Lagi banyak, nampak tak? 80% dah oxygen unload the hemoglobin unload the oxygen compared to when tissue is at rest. Nampak tak? You can see the comparison. Okay? Right. Okay, next. Ya, ya.
Kalau soalan ditanya yang loaded, kita jawab, contoh ditanya loaded dekat during exercise kan, kita jawab 18 lah kan?
Loaded during exercise. Unloaded.
Oh, tak ada yang soalan loaded, yang loaded.
Tak ada, sebab dekat tissue during exercise, oxygen will be unloaded.
Oh.
Dia load dekat sini sahaja.
Jadi yang 18% tu oksigen dalam paru-paru ke madam?
Ketepuan oksigen dalam hemoglobin.
Dalam hemoglobin.
Yang maksudnya berapa banyak oksigen yang tinggal dalam kita punya hemoglobin? Hemoglobin mana? Hemoglobin yang dalam darah kita tu tinggal berapa persen? Yang pergi kepada tisu ataupun yang berlaku pada saat tisu is doing exercise.
Okay, faham madam.
Okay, meaning that our our lung tadi, lung kita pergi ambil load dalam 98%. Dah penuh dah ni. Hemoglobin dah penuh. Tapi bila sampai darah tu dekat, hemoglobin kan jalan dalam darah. Bila sampai dekat tisu masa exercise, dia buang lagi banyak. Dia release. So tinggal 18%. So maksudnya how many percent has been unloaded? 80%. Macam itulah. Okay?
Itu dalam badan kita lah kan madam?
Ya, betul.
Thank you madam.
Okay. Bukan dalam badan kita yang macam bila you check oximeter tu kan, oksigen berapa persen, itu lain. Ini dalam pada tisu during exercise. Macam tu. Ini pada saat partial pressure tissue masa rest. Okay. Kalau yang oximeter yang kita tengok tu is oxygen saturation in the lung. In the lung kita. Right? Berapa oxygen saturation? Kalau 98% you pakai oximeter kan, yang masa kena COVID lah, sibuk semua orang nak buka tangan tu kan. That one, that is calculating oxygen saturation in the lung. Okay, if oxygen saturation in the lung awak dah rendah, of course lah kita punya percentage saturation in the tissue also will be lebih rendah lagi kan. So because it is affecting, so based on the amount or percentage of oxygen that is carried in the alveoli or transported in the alveoli. Okay, alright. Okay, so finish with that. Next, we go to the subtopic Bohr shift. Okay, that's why Madam ulang balik tadi pasal oxygen dissociation curve. Kenapa? If you can't understand oxygen dissociation curve, you might be having problem with Bohr shift, right? Sebab Bohr shift is related to oxygen dissociation curve. Okay, right? Bohr shift is, or Bohr effect is displacement, pengalihan, tergalih to displacement. Displacement of oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve due to certain factors. Number one, increase in carbon dioxide level in the tissue. Number two, changes in terms of acidity of blood, right? And number three, increase in temperature, right? So these three factors can cause oxygen dissociation curve to be shifted to the right. Curve tu akan teralih ke kanan. Right, madam, kanan yang mana? Kanan kita tengok depan ni ke kanan yang kita kena terbalik tu, madam? Kanan yang kita tengok ni, bila kita tengok ni kanan, dia akan teralih ke kanan, shifted to the right. Okay, so this result in reduced affinity. Apa kesan shifting of the oxygen dissociation curve? It will reduce affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. Dia menyebabkan hemoglobin jadi kurang kecenderungannya terhadap oksigen. Kalau kurang kecenderungan terhadap oksigen, maknanya oksigen can be easily unloaded effectively to the active tissue. Right, lagi senanglah hemoglobin nak lepaskan oksigen to the tissue. Nampak tak? Right? Cantiknya Allah cipta. Sampai tahap macam tu sekali. Allah tahu condition kita. When we are doing exercise, we need more oxygen. So due to that, Allah izinkan, Allah cipta this kind of oxygen dissociation curve ni, and it is able to be shifted to meet the demand of our body. Okay, right. Okay, in active tissue, carbon dioxide release react with water and form carbonic acid. So this will lower the pH of its surrounding and induce hemoglobin to release more oxygen. Okay, apa kaitan carbon dioxide dengan pH? Kan? Right? So remember, higher level of carbon dioxide. So in other words, carbon dioxide is easily soluble. Right? Dia sangat senang terlarut dalam air. So carbon dioxide will react with water and it will form carbonic acid. Okay, carbonic acid will dissociate into hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. So here you can see the relation. The higher the amount of or the higher level of carbon dioxide produced in respiring tissue, so the higher the level of or concentration of hydrogen ion. So what is the effect? The higher the concentration of hydrogen ion, the lower the pH. So maksudnya makin tinggi carbon dioxide level in your blood, pH of your blood will lower. Daripada 7.4, dia akan turun. 7.1 lah, 6.8 lah, right? So this is the effect of carbon dioxide level towards pH. Okay, right. So when this thing happen, when your body is respiring more, your pH of blood drop, it will induce hemoglobin to release more oxygen, or in other words, to unload more oxygen. Okay, so what is the significance behind these features of factors related to carbon dioxide and also pH and whatnot? It will cause hemoglobin to become more efficient in terms of releasing oxygen. In other words, more oxyhemoglobin dissociate into oxygen and hemoglobin. So oxyhemoglobin, okay, dia akan dissociate into oxygen and also hemoglobin. Okay. Kurang macam itulah. Okay. Alright. Okay. So now, as tissue become more active, respiration rate will increase. So more carbon dioxide will be released. So tissue receive more oxygen and continue aerobic respiration at the same partial pressure of oxygen. So tissue receive more oxygen and can continue aerobic respiration at the same partial pressure of oxygen. Right? So highlight this word. Right? I will explain you kejap lagi. Apa maksudnya tisu boleh dapat lagi banyak oksigen walaupun pada partial pressure yang sama. Okay, right. So as conclusion, hemoglobin is more efficient in taking up or in loading oxygen, right, when carbon dioxide level is low. For example, in the lung. So in the lung, carbon dioxide level is low, oxygen level is very, very high. So hemoglobin is more efficient in terms of loading the oxygen, okay, in the lung. Okay, now let's see the difference of oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin and in normal pH and when the pH is 7.1 and 7.1 and 6.8. Okay, so let's see. Right, so this is the picture. Okay, so the black curve is the normal oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin. Okay, the red one is when the pH is 7.1 and the blue is when the pH is 6.8. So you can see the more lower your blood pH is, the oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin will be shifted more to the right. Dia akan lebih pergi ke kanan. Okay, now this is what I'm going to explain about. More oxygen can be unloaded even at the same partial pressure. Okay, tengok contoh, we are using partial pressure of 40. Contoh, partial pressure 40. Kita tengok, at 40 mmHg, okay, our normal blood pH, oxygen saturation kita adalah around 75%. At this same partial pressure, when our blood pH dropped to 7.1, oxygen saturation of hemoglobin tinggal 55%. So nampak tak beza dia apa? Right? When the blood pH is dropped, contoh you are doing exercise, blood pH kita rendah, tetapi badan kita boleh dapat additional 15% of oxygen. Right? So this is what it is meant by hemoglobin is become more efficient in terms of unloading the oxygen, even at the same partial pressure. Okay, right? And what happened when the blood pH is 6.8? Nampak? 40% saturation. Ketupuan tinggal dalam 40% sahaja. So mana lagi? So total you dapat kat sini is 10%. So you can see there is additional 10% of oxygen can be unloaded by the hemoglobin in highly ataupun very active respiring tissue, so that it can still undergoing normal aerobic respiration at the same partial pressure. Okay, right. Okay, so you can see apa aku kira ni? 75 tolak 55, 20 lah adik. Okay. 20%. Ya Allah, 55 tolak 40. Kenapa semua orang diam? Tak betulkan saya punya matematik? Very good. Okay. So this is 15%. So nampak tak beza dia? So additional 20% and additional 15% release at different partial pressure if you compare the oxygen dissociation curve at different blood pH. Alright, so additional oxygen release from hemoglobin at higher concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood. Okay, right. So this is the first one. So you have to draw the picture, right? So you can screenshot and copy in your notes, or you can refer to the recording later. Okay, that is the first one. Faham ke tak faham yang tu?
InsyaAllah faham, Madam.
Okay, alright. Next, let's see the effect of temperature on oxygen and hemoglobin dissociation curve at different temperature. 10 degrees Celsius, 20, 38, and 43 degrees Celsius. Okay, our normal body temperature is around 37, 38 degrees Celsius. All right, and you can see when temperature increase, the oxygen dissociation curve shifted to the right, and lower temperature will be to the left of the normal temperature. Okay, so let's see at the same partial pressure, 40 mmHg, you can see that, okay, untuk normal blood pH, normal body temperature, oxygen saturation is around 75%. And here in high temperature of body, you can see that oxygen saturation is around 60%. Okay, so meaning to say when you are doing exercise, carbon dioxide level you will increase, your body temperature also will increase, right? So sama, it will cause the oxygen dissociation curve to be shifted to the right. So your hemoglobin have low affinity towards oxygen. So low affinity towards oxygen means dia kurang kecenderungan kepada oksigen, maka more oxygen can be unloaded by the hemoglobin. Faham? Okay. Can you get the words?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, next. Compare oxygen dissociation curve between hemoglobin and myoglobin. Okay. All right. Look at here. This is the oxygen dissociation curve between hemoglobin and myoglobin. Oxygen dissociation curve of myoglobin is not located to the left. Not shifted to the right, but it is to the left of hemoglobin, and in fact, it is hyperbolic. Curve dia hyperbolic. Dia bukan macam almost sigmoid like the normal oxygen dissociation curve. Right? So you can see from here. Maknanya apa? Okay, sebelum tu Bina tanya lagi sekali. Myoglobin can carry or store how many molecule of oxygen?
One, madam.
Satu. Satu je. Okay. So each myoglobin molecule can carry or store 1 molecule of oxygen compared to hemoglobin that can carry 4 molecule of oxygen. Right? So satu myoglobin ni, satu oxygen that is carried or stored by myoglobin ni, dia satu, baik macam ni, dia kata, analoginya adalah seperti dia ada satu je benda. So bila ada satu je, dia sayang sangat dengan yang satu ni. Faham tak? So maknanya myoglobin will not easily unload the oxygen. That's why the curve is to the left, to the hemoglobin. Okay, bukti dia apa? Okay, bukti. Midam terus ambil, okay. When tissue is at rest, oxygen saturation of hemoglobin is around 70+. Okay. But the oxygen saturation of myoglobin is still 98%. Nampak tak? Walaupun that is tissue during normal metabolism. Maknanya bila kita buat metabolism biasa, berjalan macam biasa, bangun, duduk, masak, menyapu, semua metabolism biasa ni, myoglobin kita will not unload the oxygen. Dia takkan keluarkan oksigen tu daripada muscle. Right? Okay. So, when myoglobin will release the oxygen? When partial pressure is very low. Low partial pressure of, very low partial pressure of oxygen. Berapa? Tengoklah contoh. Kita ambil 10 partial pressure. You can see, bila 10 partial pressure of oxygen, oxygen saturation of myoglobin is around 65%. Baru nampak significant difference compared to when tissue at rest. Okay, alright. So that is the difference between hemoglobin and myoglobin oxygen dissociation curve. Okay. Right. Oxygen dissociation curve of myoglobin is hyperbolic and to the left of hemoglobin. So what is the significance of this kind of condition? So it can store oxygen in the form of myohemoglobin in the muscle fiber. It combines readily with oxygen, maknanya dia pegang betul-betul oxygen tu, right? But oxymyoglobin will only release oxygen when the partial pressure of oxygen in the skeletal muscle is very low. Okay, this is a keyword. When the partial pressure is very low. Okay, that's why bila kita jogging tu kita dah start rasa nak krem kaki ke apa ke, itu menunjukkan, membuktikan yang oxygen in the, myoglobin has unload a lot of oxygen from the skeletal muscle. So oxygen dah kurang, so muscle kita pun mungkin dah nak switch kepada aerobic respiration. That's why you start feeling fatigue, lenguh, semua tu. Okay. Okay. So this will enable muscle to continue respiring aerobically even at low level of oxygen. Okay. Okay, next one. Okay, compare the oxygen dissociation curve between human maternal and fetal hemoglobin. Compare oxygen dissociation curve between human maternal and fetal hemoglobin. Meaning, human maternal means a mother who is carry the child in her womb. Maksudnya kita nak tengok apa beza oxygen dissociation curve of ibu mengandung dengan anak yang dikandungnya. Right? So you can see the fetal hemoglobin is to the left. Oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin, right? For the fetal hemoglobin have higher affinity towards oxygen. Alright, maknanya apa? Okay, tengok contoh. At partial pressure of 40 mmHg, the mother oxygen saturation is, the pregnant mother is around 60. Selalu kita kalau orang biasa ni dalam 75 kan, 78, 75 kan. Ibu yang mengandung, oxygen saturation dia 60% sahaja. That's why mak-mak mengandung ni dia cepat penat. Cepat mengah. Kenapa? Inilah dia. Oxygen saturation of hemoglobin dia around 60%. Okay. Kenapa ya? Sebab ni. You can see what is the oxygen saturation of the fetus? 80%. Nampak tak? Allah ciptakan benda tanpa sia-sia. Allah tahu baby in the womb has nothing. They are helpless. Tak boleh nak buat apa-apa. Paru-paru pun belum boleh berfungsi sendiri. Right? Tapi Allah bagi dia a very good hemoglobin. Where the hemoglobin of the fetus is very special, where it has high affinity for oxygen. Kecenderungan dia terhadap oksigen sangat-sangat tinggi. In other words, macam seolah-olah hemoglobin anak tu boleh ambil oksigen daripada hemoglobin mak through placenta so that they can survive. Okay? Nampak tak tu? Okay? So fetal hemoglobin oxygen dissociation curve is to the left of the maternal hemoglobin. So the fetal hemoglobin has higher affinity for oxygen than the maternal hemoglobin. So it can take oxygen from the maternal hemoglobin at the same partial pressure in the placenta. All right? Okay. Okay, any question? So far so good, eh? Okay. So finish with, yeah? Okay, Minha?
Tak ada soalan.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that is all about the gaseous exchange in human, what we have learned and what you have learned based on the video. Okay, right. Now we are moving to the gaseous exchange in plants. So I'm going to finish this chapter first, and then we will stop for 5-minute break. Okay, right. So next one is explain mechanism of stomatal opening and closing. So we all know that plant have stoma. Right? So stoma is the gap between the gut cell. Apa bahasa Melayu gut cell eh? Sel apa? You belajar gut cell? Sel penjaga ke nama dia? Betul ke sel penjaga? Bahasa Melayu dia?
Sel pengawal.
Sel pengawal. Sel pengawal. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. So stoma is the gap between the two gut cell. Right, so ada dua sel pengawal, ada sepasang sel pengawal, so dia akan kontrol stoma untuk buka atau tutup. Okay, itu all this while yang kita tahu. So bila stoma buka, carbon dioxide can enter, water can enter the cell, right? So photosynthesis can occur. Kita dah belajar bio 1, photosynthesis. Okay, photosynthesis can occur. High level of carbon dioxide can be captured. Okay, apa nama tu, to induce Calvin cycle, bla bla bla, semua dah belajar, right? When the stomata is closed at in hot temperature ataupun hot season, for example, stomata will close. So when stomata is closed, then photorespiration happen. Kita dah tahu dah. Stomata close kenapa? Stomata close because they want to avoid losing water, a lot of water. Kan? But then the question now is, macam mana stoma boleh buka atau tutup? What leads that thing to happen? So this is what we are going to learn. Okay, right. Okay, so this is two different conditions of stoma. When the stoma is open, when the stoma is closed. Okay, so before we explore more, I want you to focus on these three main features of the gut cell. Okay, so kita tahu these are the two gut cells, 1 dan 2, and this is when stomata is open. And this is condition when the stomata is closed. Alright, so I want you to focus untuk 3 structure benda ni. So these 3 features actually induce ataupun mempengaruhi, alright, what makes the stoma to be open like that and close. Number 1, you can see here, this is the outer cell wall, inner cell wall. Okay, and this is outer cell wall. So the inner cell wall is thicker compared to the outer cell wall. Okay, nampak kan kat sini? The inner cell wall is thicker compared to the outer cell wall. Okay, itu yang pertama. Okay. The second one is, I want you to focus on this orientation of cellulose microfibril. So this is cellulose microfibril. So this cellulose microfibril is radially oriented. Dia dalam bentuk radial macam tu. Kenapa Allah tak cipta dia longitudinal? Kenapa dia tak fiber tu macam gini, menegak-menegak? Kenapa dia macam almost melintang? Right? Ataupun dia radially. Kenapa dia radially? Ada sebab dia. Okay? And number 3 is, look at the structure of the gut cell. They are fused at the end. Okay, fuse on both ends. Right? Kenapa dia fuse dekat hujung sini dengan hujung sini? Kenapa dia fuse? Kenapa dia tak duduk sebelah-sebelah macam gini aja? Right? Kenapa dia fuse? Ada sebab. Okay, right. So these are the 3 features or structure of the gut cell. Okay. Okay. Right. So, okay. What is stoma? Stoma is physical gap between the 2 gut cell. Right. Gut cells are suspended by other epidermal cell over an air chamber that lead to the internal airspace. So dia duduk dekat kawasan-kawasan yang contoh bawah daun, kita tahu dah, kita dah belajar semua ni kan. Okay, so it is suspended on the epidermal cell. Okay, next, gut cell control diameter of the stoma. The gut cell is the one that will control the diameter of the stoma by changing shape. So siapa punya bentuk yang berubah? The gut cell. Right? So as the shape change, it can be either widening. So when it is widened, so the stomata is open. When it is narrowing, stomata will be closed. Okay, right. Okay, next. What happens when the gut cell takes in water by osmosis? Okay, kalau kita lukis balik gut cell, okay, so we have, okay, this is the inner and then this is the outer membrane. So we have vacuole over here, cytoplasm, blah, 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 right? Okay, so when the gut cell takes in water, how did we know that the gut cell is taking water? So you have to know that in the vacuole or in the cytoplasm, they are having a lot of solutes. So the higher the concentration of solute, the lower the water potential in the gut cell. So gut cell having lower water potential compared to the surrounding tissue or surrounding cell. Right? So surrounding cell have higher water potential. So water will enter the gut cell via osmosis. So the gut cell will become turgid. Right? So as it turgid, it will bulge. Nampak tak? Bentuk dia akan jadi melengkung macam yang dia lukis tu. Dia jadi melengkung. Alright? It is bulge due to the orientation of cellulose microfibril. Dia akan terpaksa melengkung. One of the factor is because the cellulose microfibril that radially oriented. Kan? So dia macam seolah-olah terpaksa ke tepi yang macam itulah. Widening like that. Okay? And thus the gap between the cell open. But when the gut cell lose water, so there is a case when, right, the water potential inside the gut cell is higher compared to the surrounding tissue. So water will diffuse out of the gut cell into the surrounding tissue, right? So the cell become flaccid. So as it is flaccid, it less bowed. So the gap between the cell will close. Okay. Okay. So why the gut cell bow apart? Kenapa dia melengkung, bow? Kenapa dia macam seolah bow? Arigato. Kan? Kenapa dia macam tu? Why the cell bow when why the gut cell bow when it is turgid? The first one is because they are fused at the end. Yang tadi kita cakap tu. The gut cell is not located like this ataupun arranged in this way. This is one gut cell, this is another gut cell, but it is fused at the end like this. Okay, fused at the end. Right? So what happened? When it is turgid, nak tak nak, it will be bowed because they are fused at the end. Okay, kalau dia tak bow, dia akan macam ni. Right? Okay. Number 2 is the inner cell wall which form the stoma is thicker compared to the outer wall. Okay. Dinding bahagian dalam lebih tebal daripada dinding bahagian luar. Right? Okay, so tu. Number 3. Right? So bila dinding dalam lebih tebal daripada dinding luar, much more of the force will be going outward. That's why nak tak nak dia akan terbuka keluar macam ni. Macam tu. Okay, right. Dia bukannya tertutup macam bukan, dia terbuka. Okay, because of the force. Okay. Number 3, the orientation of cellulose microfibril that is oriented radially compared to longitudinally. So this is what makes it need to be bowed outward, not bowing inward macam mana ke kan? Tak. Okay. So that is it. These are the 3 reasons why gut cell bow apart when it is turgid. Okay. Okay. The next question is how? Okay. Macam mana boleh stomata tu terbuka? Air boleh? Air boleh masuk, stoma boleh terbuka. Right? So what makes that happen? One of the features is due to the role of potassium ion. So we are going to see the mechanism of stomata opening and closing related to role of potassium ion. Okay? So you can see over here, warna merah tu semua potassium, right? So this potassium can lead to the what we call it, diffusion of water. Okay, all right. Okay, so mechanism. Okay, mechanism of stomata opening started with the blue light. So blue light is one of the light spectrum. Okay, spectrum cahaya yang warna biru. So blue light, when the blue light strike the gut cells, okay, example. All right. So the blue light triggers the activation of membrane proton pump. So kat sini, right, ada proton pump. Proton pump purposely to pump proton or hydrogen ion. Right? So this blue light activate this proton pump located in the gut cells plasma membrane. So activated membrane proton pump hydrogen ion out of the gut cell. So what happened? Dalam ni ada hydrogen ion in the gut cell ni. So hydrogen ion is pumped out. Hydrogen ion keluar. So when a lot of hydrogen ion diffuse out, okay, through the proton pump, it will cause the membrane potential ataupun the voltage of the membrane, right, become more negative. So inside of the membrane, okay, inside of the membrane become negative and it will drive potassium ion into the cell through specific membrane channel. Okay, maksudnya macam ni. Right? So what happened? Bila hydrogen ion or proton is positive charge. So when there are a lot of positive charge that lost, right, from the cell, inside of the cell ni, atau kita panggil voltage of the membrane will become negative. Inside of the membrane akan jadi negative. So keadaan ni tak boleh. So we need to balance the electronegativity. Terlalu negatif tak boleh. So untuk balancekan the electronegativity, right? Potassium ion yang daripada luar banyak-banyak ni, from the surrounding cell ni, banyak-banyak ni, potassium ion will be transported into the gut cell using specific ion channel. Specific potassium ion channel. So potassium akan masuk. So potassium pun banyaklah dalam ni. Okay. So accumulation of potassium, right, will increase the solute potential ataupun will decrease water potential. So dah banyak sangat solute dalam sel tu yang menyebabkan water potential in the gut cell will be lower. Okay. So then water potential in the surrounding tissue is very high. So water then diffuse into the gut cell via osmosis and make the cell become turgid. So as the cell turgid, so the gut cell will be, the stomata will be open. The gut cell will be bowed and stomata will open. Okay, so you can see from here. Again, tadi, so when the voltage or membrane potential become more negative, it will drive potassium ion to be diffused into the cell through specific membrane channel. Absorption of potassium ion cause the water potential to become more negative, right, in the gut cell compared to the water potential in the surrounding cells or surrounding the tissue. So water enter the cell from the neighboring cell via osmosis. The gut cell become turgid and bow outward. So stomata will be open. Okay, right. So that is mechanism of stomata opening. Any question?
No, madam.
Okay, no, right. Alhamdulillah. Okay, next we go to stomatal closing. Sudah buka, apa pula mekanisme untuk tutup? Okay, so stomatal closing is given again related to the potassium ion juga, one of the factors or contributing factors of stomatal closing, loss of potassium ion. So tadi potassium masuk, now potassium keluar, right? So when a lot of potassium ion keluar from the gut cell, it causes the water potential in the gut cell to be very high compared to the water potential in the surrounding cells, right? And then what cause? It will cause the water to be diffused out of the gut cell into the surrounding tissue. So the gut cell lose its rigidity and stomata will close. Okay, right. And despite potassium, right, another contributing factor to stomata closing is induced by stress. So tumbuhan bila dalam keadaan stres. Bila tumbuhan stres? Satu bila dia sakit, injury. Satu lagi bila dia kena kemarau. Keadaan kemarau, drought, stress. Okay, so bila keadaan yang terlalu panas sangat, right? So the plant is having intention to survive, okay, to reduce loss of water, so dia akan tutup stomata ni. So macam mana dia boleh tutup? Satu tadi by the mechanism of potassium, yang kedua is induced by abscisic acid. Abscisic acid is one of the plant hormone. Right? So bila keadaan stres, panas macam ni, tumbuhan akan keluarkan hormone, abscisic acid. Okay? So this abscisic acid produced in root and leaves in response to water deficiency, and it will signal the stomata to close. Macam tu. Okay? Right. Itu sahaja mechanism for stomata closing. Any question? Tak ada. Okay, kalau tak ada, that's all. So that is all about chapter 2. Finish with chapter 2. Okay, so we take 5 minutes break and we will continue after this. Okay, so take 5. Okay, so let's continue with assignment briefing. Okay, before we go to chapter 3, if we do have time, inshallah. Okay, right. So this is our continuous assessment for biology 2. So assignment 10%. So this assignment need to be completed within 5 weeks. Okay, right. And the percentage of assessment is 10%. 5% of the submission of reports, and another 5% for individual online question in iTalim. Okay, right. So the topic cover is gaseous exchange. So part of the some part of the topic is taught in class, and some of the topic will be in the assignment itself. Okay. All right, so what we have to do in this week is group setting. So you have been divided into groups, ada 4, ada 5, ada 6, right? So same as Bio 1, you have to set the ground rules of the team, and the ground rules must be written and submitted together in your report. So the ground rule must be acknowledged and signed by all members of the group. Okay, right. You have to assign the role of the team, assign leader. So without leader, we cannot do work lah, kan? Okay, so leader will chair the meeting and then plan on the task distribution and whatnot. Okay, work together with coordinator. So coordinator will be the last person who will check on the formatting, right? So this is my suggestion lah, one of the tasks of coordinator, right? So to coordinate, make sure everyone is doing the task following the timeline given, and then coordinator is the last person, or maybe together with leader, they are the last person who will check all the formattings, numbering of figures, spacing, and blah blah blah, font type, and so on. Okay, right. And runner will be the one who will do the special tasks like photocopy, okay, collecting money from others to photostate, bukan guna duit dia sendiri, kan? Okay, itulah, right. So next I will explain to you what are your tasks. Okay, lepas ni. So this is what we have in week 2. So in week 3 next week, you will do your self-learning. Self-learning means your own group time to discuss, to do readings, okay, or maybe additional readings from internet, okay, watching videos and so on, and delegate the task equally lah, okay. And then week 4 will be clarification and discuss assignment material. So will be face-to-face consultation with me, right, in class on the progress of assignment. Okay, better nak make sure you all faham apa yang you all buat, right? You managed to cover everything that we wanted to, okay? And in case you have already come with your draft, dah siap draft dah, so I will check on your draft whatever that need to be. Maybe nak kena adjust sikit ke, tambah tolak ke, apa ke, kan? Okay, right. And then next in week 5 to week 6 is submission and checking of draft. So you dah betulkan, made dah comment and everything. You have your time 1 week to check the draft, right? And then submit the draft and for me to check. And then week 7 you have to submit the full report, okay? And answer online quiz in iTalim. So this one will be in week 7, around 22nd to 26th of May. Okay, pejam celik kan, bukannya lagu pejam celik pejam, bukan lagu raya tu tau. Okay, right. So pejam celik dah nak masuk minggu 7, right? Okay, and then next is what are the tasks? Okay, your task first is to answer these following questions. Search the answer for these questions. The first one, describe respiratory tract of human. Describe maksudnya bukan state. State nyatakan. Nyata tu maksudnya you just bagi tahu what are the respiratory tract of human, hidung, la la la. But this one, the LO is describe. Bila describe maksudnya you're just not stating or mentioning or identifying the structure or organ in the respiratory tract, but you must be able to explain or describe the characteristic of each respiratory tract. Faham? Maksudnya kalau you tengah cakap the first respiratory airways kita start with nasal cavity. So bukan sekadar you sebut nasal cavity ataupun lubang hidung ni, rongga hidung, you can explain what do you have here in the nasal cavity. What are their functions? So kena detail macam tu. Okay, right. So next one is describe characteristic of human respiratory surface. Right? What is respiratory surface? Ni pun you kena cari. Right? Respiratory pigment kita ada belajar dalam kelas. Hemoglobin, myoglobin. What is respiratory surface? You kena cari. Then you can understand how to describe the characteristic and the function of the respiratory surface. Okay. Next, once you know what is respiratory surface, you can explain how the respiratory surface can enhance gases exchange. Maksudnya, what are the special thing that the respiratory surface has, okay, to increase efficiency of gases exchange. Okay. Next, describe partial pressure gradient, okay, in gases exchange. So you have to search and read what is partial pressure gradient. Okay. Is there any different partial pressure gradient dekat tempat ni, dekat tempat tu, dekat sini, dekat situ, right? And what is the significance of having different partial pressure gradient at different areas? Okay, so tu semua kena cari. Okay, and then question B2 is related to question B3. So once you understand about partial pressure gradient of gases exchange, so you have to discuss the loading and unloading of respiratory gases. Macam mana the loading of oxygen and the loading and the unloading of oxygen and also carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is what we call as respiratory gases. Okay, next is C, explain. So kalau explain, it must be detailed mechanism of carbon dioxide transportation from the tissue to the lung. Specific carbon dioxide transportation from the tissue to be exhaled out of the lung, right? Or to be transported out during exhalation. Okay, apa mechanism yang berlaku? Okay, very detailed, kena explain. And then last one, explain homeostatic control of breathing in human. Homeostatic control of breathing in human maksudnya apa? What are the mechanism that involve which allow us to inhale and exhale? Kenapa kita after a very deep inhalation we have to exhale? Kenapa kita tak boleh inhale sampai 3 minit ke 1 minit ke kan? Tak boleh. Sampai satu tahap, we have to exhale. What is the mechanism or what we call as homeostatic control of breathing in human? What happen when to our rib cage? Apa yang menyebabkan bila kita inhale, our rib move upward and forward. Masa sekolah kita dah belajar kan? During inhalation, okay, the rib cage will be moved upward and forward. The intercostal muscle will be upper than upper. But the question now is you have to explain mechanism. Okay, what control or what induce that from happen? Okay, right. So these are the details that you have to search for. Okay, right. So material given to you, Campbell book, you can search in chapter gases exchange or blood circulatory system ke apa kan, which one that is necessary. Okay, in Campbell book. And you have to watch this video, wajib, right? So this video can help you to answer one of the question. Okay, A, B, C, D. Okay, right. And then in terms of formatting, okay, so you have to use font Verdana, size 12, and then 2 centimeter margin, top, left, and bottom, with 1 single spacing, and page number must be center. Maximum number of page is 15 page, including the table of content. Okay, right. And then the answer must be organized into introduction, discussion, and conclusion. Similar with Bio 1. I don't want you to have or susun dalam bentuk soalan jawapan, soalan jawapan, soalan jawapan. Tak mau. Okay, you have to put it in chapters. Chapter 1, introduction. Chapter 2, discussion. Chapter 3, conclusion. Chapter 4, reference. So in introduction, mungkin you menjawab soalan A. Faham tak? Maknanya introduction awak itu adalah sebenarnya penerangan kepada jawapan A. Okay, so bila Madam baca, Madam kata, oh okay, this is menjawab soalan A. Okay, in discussion you ada anak-anak. Chapter 2 kan discussion.
You ada anak 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 contohnya. So 2.1, you ubahlah dia punya soalan ni. Contohlah soalan dia, describe characteristic of human respiratory surface. Awak tukarlah kepada what is respiratory surface ataupun respiratory surface. Dia cerita respiratory surface gini. Anak nombor 2. What is characteristic of respiratory surface. Nampak tak? Maknanya instead of tulis soalan, jawapan, you susunkan dia dalam bentuk yang lebih cantik so that it is more understandable to be read. So bila baca, Madam tahu, oh okay, ni jawab soalan 2A, ni jawab soalan 2B and so on. Okay, right. And then you have to put diagrams, okay, table of figures that may be related, right, with the formatting given over here. Kalau that is the first figure in chapter 1, then you put as figure 1.1, double dot, apa nama dia, right? So itu. And then you have to impart Islamic point of view or any hadith ke, translation of the verse of Quran ke, okay? So you have to insertkan dia and elaboratekan dia dekat mana tempat yang sesuai. Mungkin if you want to start your introduction with a verse of Quran, right? So letakkan dia dekat introduction and relatekan dia, macam mana dia boleh relate dengan apa yang awak cuba explain. Okay, right? And then next, submission of complete report must be in group, satu report sahaja, including cover page, table of content, okay, ground rules, and also reference. Okay, right, for Islamization. So dalam chapter 4 reference tu hanya ada reference for your Islamization sahaja. Okay, next online question, right, need to be answered in iTaklim, right, sama ada start daripada 22 until 26 of May, and it only compose 15 MCQ questions, and this will carry 5% of your carry mark. Okay, and your 5% of assignment will following this rubric, we will assess you according to knowledge. Maksudnya adakah it covers all the learning outcome needed. Okay, number 2, is the Islamic point of view that you put is related to the discussion ataupun tak relate langsung, ataupun setakat ada letak je ayat Quran translation lepas tu awak cerita pasal benda lain kan, ataupun awak kaitkan dia dengan topik awak tu. Okay, next is originality, not copy and paste directly from the textbook. All right, rephrase the word a little bit. Okay, and then report criteria must be following all the format given, right? And 5% is came from the question, online question iTaklim. Okay, right. So that is all for assignment. Any question for the assignment? Any question?
Tak ada, Madam.
Tak ada Okay.
Madam nak tanya. Untuk bab 2 nanti ni akan masuk dalam test midterm lagi tak?
Tak. Yang mana yang dalam assignment dia takkan masuk dah. Okay, maknanya yang whatever yang kita ajar dalam slide, yang Madam tunjuk dalam slide, itu yang akan masuk dalam test. Yang mana yang dalam assignment will be answered in the iTaklim question sahaja.
So maksudnya akan ada jugalah bab 2 yang masuk exam.
Mestilah yang mana yang kita belajar tu dalam kelas tu, itu yang masuk exam.
Okay, Madam.
Okay. Right. Lagi soalan? Tak ada? Okay. Kalau tak ada, you all nak sambung ke? Nak stop kelas ke? Ush, tak ada jawapan Tak ada jawapan. Jawapan Madam sambunglah.
Boleh je mana-mana, Madam.
Okay. Alright. Sikit je. Okay, chapter 3. Sikit je, just introduction to chapter 3. Okay. Okay, meanwhile, siapa lagi yang belum tulis attendance tu tulis ya. Okay, all right. So chapter 3, just a little bit introduction to chapter 3, maybe around 10 minutes maximum. Okay, so chapter 3 is about transport and circulation. Okay, so we are going to explore our cardiovascular system, meaning to say the heart and also the blood vessel surrounding the blood vessel of the heart and also general blood vessel lah. Okay, right. Sekejap eh. Okay, right, next we are going to learn about the cardiovascular disease. Okay, penyakit-penyakit yang berkaitan dengan jantung dan juga salur darah kepada jantung, lymphatic system and transportation in plants. Okay, so this is what we are going to learn in chapter 3. Okay, all right, so every organism must exchange material with its environment. Okay, this exchange occurs ultimately at cellular level. For unicellular organism, all right, the exchange happen directly with the environment. Unicellular organism is like amoeba, right? So they are very simple organism. So simple diffusion is enough, right, for allowing the gases exchange to takes place, right? But as for a complex organism or multicellular organism, diffusion alone is not adequate for the internal transport of material for animal. Okay, thus specialized circulatory system is required to interact with every organ in the body, right? Meaning to say, for complex organism, for multicellular organism, simple diffusion is not enough to support the exchange of material. So we need a very complex ataupun a very specialized system, which we call as circulatory system. So circulatory system divided into two: open circulatory system and closed circulatory system. So closed circulatory system is what that we have. All right. So it is a closed. Closed here means the circulatory system ataupun the body fluids is confined within a closed vessel, where the environment inside the vessel or inside the circulatory system will not going to be mixed with the fluid or the environment outside of the circulatory system, right? As for open circulatory system, I guess we understand open circulatory system, what happened, the bodily fluid will be mixed with the external environment. So this is what you have learned before. Example, the open circulatory system that we have in grasshopper. Kan you belajar di sekolah. Okay, right. So next, let's go and describe mammalian cardiovascular system and state their function. Okay. All right. So what are the function of cardiovascular system or circulatory system of mammals, including human? So first, the function of vertebrate circulatory system is to transport nutrient. Example, transport nutrient kat mana? From digestive system, right? It can be transported and stored from the storage depot to each cell. Daripada mana-mana tempat simpanan, kita boleh hantar ke cell. So this is the first function of circulatory system. Number two, to transport oxygen. For example, to transport oxygen from the lung or from the gills to the cell. Okay. Number three, to transport metabolic waste. To transport bahan-bahan buangan. Right. The byproduct of metabolism, right, from each organ that later going to be excrete. So transport metabolic waste. And then next, to transport hormones from the endocrine gland into the target tissue. So contoh, one of the endocrine gland kita ada pituitary gland here down our brain bahagian bawah tu kan, right? So we have pituitary gland. So how the hormone from pituitary gland can act on the organs that is far away from the brain, right? So dia bergerak melalui circulatory system. Okay, and next one is to maintain body fluid, untuk mengekalkan keseimbangan benda dalam darah, right? Ataupun dalam kita punya circulatory system. Contohnya what we have in our lymphatic system. Lymphatic system kita is very helpful in maintaining body fluid balance. Okay, so this is what we are going to explain later lah. So these are all the what we call it, function of vertebrate circulatory system. Okay. All right. Next. Okay. Cardiovascular system. The overview of cardiovascular system. Okay. So we have 4 chambers. Okay. Ataupun 4 chambered heart. Okay. The right side. This is the right side. And this is the left side of the heart. Okay, so kita kena pandang dalam pandangan yang ke badan kita ya. So sebelah kanan dan sebelah kiri. Okay, right. So the right side of the heart carries or transport deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood. Okay, right. So the deoxygenated blood will be going into the right side of the heart via vena cava. Okay, we have anterior vena cava or posterior vena cava. So this deoxygenated blood will be transported into the right atrium through or via vena cava, and from the right atrium then it will transported into the right ventricle. Okay, so from the right ventricle the deoxygenated blood will be pumped out of the heart into the lung for gaseous exchange via pulmonary arteries. Okay, so this is where oxygen will be loaded. Okay, and then now it becomes oxygenated blood. Okay, so oxygenated blood will transported back into the heart via pulmonary vein. Okay, going into the left atrium, and from the left atrium it is transported to the left ventricle, right? And then later pump out of the heart to the rest of the body through the aorta. So the oxygenated blood will be going to the forelimb, to the upper side of the body, and also hind limb to the lower side of the body. Okay, so for labeling purposes, you can refer back to textbook page 1002. Okay, in case you have to label. Right. Okay, next. Okay, sikit lagi. Describe the structure of human heart. Okay, so next LO is to explain the differences in thickness of the wall of different chambers in the, and also in terms of their function. Okay, right. So this is human heart. So the human heart is located within the thoracic cavity, and it is separated from the abdominal cavity via diaphragm. So diaphragm help to separate the thoracic cavity and also the abdominal cavity. Okay. All right. So again, this is the detailed structure of the human heart. So you have over here is the left ventricle, right? So again, this is the right side of the heart. This is left side of the heart. Okay. So left ventricle, and here we have a valve that connected to the going out to the from the heart. So we have over here named as semilunar valve. So this is semilunar valve. Okay, in the aorta. This is semilunar valve in pulmonary artery. Okay, so this is aorta, right? So aorta ada dua. This is descending aorta that going to the lower part of body. Okay, next we have vena cava, superior and inferior vena cava. So superior also we call as anterior. Okay, inferior nama lain dia posterior lah. Alright. Okay, so vena cava brings the deoxygenated blood into the right side of the heart. Okay, going into the right atrium and then to the left, sorry, to the right ventricle via atrioventricular atrioventricular valve. Another name of atrioventricular valve is AV valve. Okay, AV valve. So kita ada dua AV valve, sebelah kanan dan sebelah kiri. Okay, right. So, and this is pulmonary artery. So vena cava brings the deoxygenated blood and then going to the lung via pulmonary artery to the right and to the left side of the lung. Okay, and then we have pulmonary vein, right, that carries the oxygenated blood back to the heart. Okay, and then we have here left atrium, and the juncture or the valve between left atrium and left ventricle is atrioventricular valve. Okay, all right. Okay, last slide. Another name of atrioventricular valve, remember atrioventricular valve is general name, yang which is name antara, it is a valve between atrium and ventricle. That's why nama dia atrioventricular valve, because it is a valve between atrium and ventricle. Right, so generally kita panggil AV valve. But specific name for AV valve on the right side of the heart and the left side of the heart is different. Okay, so bicuspid and tricuspid valve. Bicuspid valve is the on the right side or on the left side? Ingat tak you belajar masa sekolah? Belajar ke tak?
Belajar.
Okay. So bicuspid is the right side or the left side of the heart?
Left.
Betul? Okay. So nampaknya semua orang dah mengantuk lah tu kan? Okay. So you can see here, this is tricuspid valve. So this is the right side of the heart and this is the left side of the heart. Okay. So tricuspid means they have the three flaps, okay, of the valve. So this is for the AV valve on the right side of the heart. Okay, tricuspid, and this is bicuspid valve. The AV valve on the what we call it? The left side of the heart. Okay, nama lain dia kita panggil mitral valve. Okay. All right. Okay, I guess that's all for today, right? So just a slide, a little bit of introduction related to chapter 3.